ॐ तपगतामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गणन्ति ते भूरिराज. Your words are like nectar, bring life to squirt souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Welcome, everyone, to our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Last Friday, we started chapter 15, the last visit to Keshab. And this was Wednesday, November 28th, 1883. And Keshab lived just another 2 or 3 months after this. So this was Thakur's last visit. And the setting of it is a little bit dramatic. First of all, M got there very early, and he was pacing back and forth in front of the Keshab's house. And he doesn't say anything, but it turns out it was 3 hours. And while he was waiting, he happened to notice that the neighboring house, that different people came, and everyone was very somber looking, and he realized that someone had died, and that the funeral was about to take place. And then, when Sri Ramakrishna finally goes to Keshab's place, they make him wait for a long time because Keshab is so ill, and he's trying to get ready, and they want to make him look a little presentable, and to have him visit Sri Ramakrishna in the drawing room and everything. And Thakur is getting very anxious to see him, and says, "What's the reason for all of this? Let me go and just see him in his own room. We don't have to keep any formalities or anything like that." And then they start talking to Sri Ramakrishna about Keshab. Now he talks to Mother, Divine Mother, and everything. And Sri Ramakrishna goes into a bit of an ecstatic mood. And then finally, when Keshab comes, it's just as the sun is setting. And Sri Ramakrishna really goes into a deep spiritual mood. And just kind of a soliloquy, talking to himself or to the Divine Mother, however we want to understand it, but with hardly noticing who's in the room or anything. Keshab has come, and Sri Ramakrishna is sitting on the floor. Keshab, with great difficulty, sitting on the floor in front of him, and Thakur in this highly ecstatic mood. Is just words of wisdom are flowing from his lips in front of Keshab, and it's really almost like the vision that Thakur had in Benares, that at the time of death, when Shiva will come and give that liberating mantra, that is if Thakur is just removing from Keshab's mind any last bit of attachment and just putting him in a deep spiritual mood. So the scene is wonderful. This is one of the many places in the gospel where we can really use this as a kind of meditation, just to try to imagine the scene, to picture Sri Ramakrishna, hardly aware that Keshab is there, talking to him somewhat, mostly talking to the Divine Mother. So this is where we left things. Yeah, just a constant flow of words. How M was able to keep all of this recorded, it's really miraculous. So this is page 321, and Sri Ramakrishna, he's just talking about the highest wisdom, not asking Keshab, how are you doing? How do you feel? So sorry to see you in this condition, nothing like that. He who is Brahman is the Adya Shakti, the primal energy. When inactive, he is called Brahman, the Purusha. He is called Shakti or Prakriti when engaged in creation, preservation, and destruction. These are the two aspects of reality, Purusha and Prakriti. He who is the Purusha is also Prakriti. Both are the embodiment of bliss. If you are aware of the male principle, you cannot ignore the female principle. He who is aware of the father must also think of the mother. Keshab laughs. He who knows darkness also knows light. He who knows night also knows day. He who knows happiness also knows misery. You understand this, don't you? Now, Sri Ramakrishna, his mind has come down enough so that he's talking to Keshab now, not just talking to the Divine Mother. This, of course, is one of the great themes in Sri Ramakrishna's spiritual outlook, we can say. He loves this idea, this really Shakti idea, tantric idea of seeing a reality in terms of male and female, the conjunction, the two aspects of that one reality as the male principle, which is sometimes thought of Shiva, female principle, the Shakti, or in the Sankhya system is Purusha and Prakriti. These terms that he's using are not being used in any very strict technical sense. When Thakur talks about Purusha and Prakriti, it doesn't mean that, oh, now he's talking about Sankhya. These are interchangeable terms for him. Shakti, Prakriti, Maya, Mahamaya, all of these. They all indicate that aspect of the divine which has a power to it, that aspect which can create this universe and project this universe out of itself and preserve it and withdraw it. And the other aspect is the unchanging aspect, which is ever present, unchanging. This is the Brahman and Maya, according to the Vedanta, or this Purusha Prakriti, according to the Sankhya system. The Tantras will talk about Shiva, Parvati, all different ways of understanding it. We have three basic ways of trying to understand this relationship. One is that they're side by side. This is a Sankhya. They'll be side by side. The other will be that they'll be inseparable, but as husband and wife are inseparable. They'll be together. We have our what is it? Naranarishwara. Huh? This image you'll see it, half is male, half is female. Hmm? Ardhanarishwara, yeah. But Sri Ramakrishna, he'll talk in those terms sometimes also, but for him, it's not even two. There's not two that are separate or two that are joined together. There's only one. There's only one. So his point of view is that when it's active, we use a different term for it. When it's inactive, we use a separate term. So the Brahman and Shakti are not two separate things. Shakti, it's confusing because Shakti is used in two different senses. If we say Shakti means power, then it's something that power that belongs to Brahman. If we say Shakti is Brahman together with its power, that means that Saguna Brahman or Ishvara, then it's not in conjunction with the Brahman. It is Brahman. So this is that idea of the mother and the woman. Huh? They're not two different things. They're not joined together. There's only the woman who, when she has a child, is mother also. So this is the way that Thakur saw the thing. This was his worldview. And if this is true, then this Prakriti, which also means nature, not just Divine Mother, huh? The nature, that all of this is the Divine Mother herself. And Thakur saw everything that way, that everything was divine for him. Everything was a manifestation of that divinity. So this is how we may think these are all just fine philosophical points that don't make too much difference. For us, they don't make too much difference. But for Sri Ramakrishna, it was seeing the divine with eyes open. It would just throw me into an ecstatic mood. So it was of tremendous import. We may think that, oh, what's the difference? The philosophers will argue about these things. A little bit, that's true to a certain extent. But in his ecstatic vision, then just seeing a mass of people would throw him into ecstasy. I mean, everything was a manifestation of the divine for him. Yeah.
In devotional school,
Hmm.
Shakti is considered as Eastern Devata.
In the devotional schools, the Ishta Devata can be anything. In the devotional schools, it depends which schools. In the Vaishnava schools, it'll be Rama, Krishna, something like that. The Shakti school, uh, so there's nothing very particular about that. That the Ishta Devata, generally we think of Ishta Devata as a personal god. Those who like to meditate on the infinite absolute reality, it won't be the same type of dualistic meditation, picturing the dwelling within the heart. It'll be more the Soham. I am that. We can say that Brahman can be the Ishta Devata, but it's not a very conventional way of speaking. Usually, it's some uh, manifest form, some tangible form that we can have some devotional relationship with. So Keshab replies, "Yes, sir, I do." The question was, "He who knows happiness also knows misery." You understand this, don't you? Keshab, "Yes, sir, I do." Master, "My mother. Who is my mother?" Now, one thing that we'll quickly learn is that Sri Ramakrishna had a very highly sophisticated philosophical understanding of this idea of the motherhood of God, and at the same time, an equally deep personal relationship with God as mother, and in the most intimate possible way we can imagine, where she would speak to him and supply him with all of the words that he had to say, that she would guide him in every way. He felt that she dwelled within the heart, making him do whatever he did. The most intimate type of personal God relationship that we can imagine, together with the highest philosophical understanding. How both of these things worked at the same time with him is uh, is a mind-boggling thing. So, who is my mother? Ah, she is the mother of the universe. It is she who creates and preserves the world, who always protects her children. So, look at this. She's creating the whole universe. At the same time, each and every devotee who feels that she's my very own mother. So, he looks upon the Divine Mother as the embodiment of all power. We can say Kali, something like that. At the same time, he looks upon the Divine Mother as a small child looks upon its own mother. Yes, that's what we fall. We start to cry. All we want is to go to the mother and have her take us in our arms and smooth us and caress us and make us feel better. That mother. So she was both to him. So it is she who creates and preserves the world, who always protects her children, and who grants whatever they desire. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. That same mother that we can ask anything of. See, Thakur is very particular when he prays. That he would say, I only prayed for pure devotion. I won't pray for anything else, that I'll give up anything, just I want pure devotion. At the same time, the small child can ask his mother anything. And all of these beautiful songs of Ram Prasad and the little stories that Thakur tells, how the child will tug at the mother and say, "Mommy, I want this," until finally she gives it. So both of these things are true. That because who do we turn to? Those who the mother is everything for them. Who do they turn to if they're in danger or if they need something? They'll also pray to mother. We have this dilemma sometimes in within the monks of the order, devotees of the order, that we want to rely fully on God and pray to God for anything. At the same time, we want to ask only for pure devotion. What do we do? So you know what the answer that we get many times: pray to Thakur only for pure devotion. Pray to Holy Mother for anything. Because Thakur and Holy Mother, this is our Brahman and Shakti, non-different. But the attitude can be a little bit different. That's all. So it is she who creates and preserves the world, who always protects her children, and who grants whatever they desire. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. A true son cannot live away from his mother. The mother knows everything. The child only eats, drinks, and makes merry. He doesn't worry himself about the things of the world. There are many advantages to worshiping God as mother. One is that we free ourselves completely from worry and anxiety. That this full reliance on mother means that she'll do whatever has to be done for us. We don't have to think about anything. If we really feel helpless in the world, we really feel that unless mother helps me to do it, I won't be able to do anything, then whatever happens we take is the work of the mother. So this is why Thakur always talks about the kitten was equally happy when the mother cat puts it in the fireplace in the ashes. Of course, not when the fire is going, but in the ashes, or on the master's bed, sitting on the pillow, lying on the pillow, like, equally happy because this must be the best place for me. This is where mother put me. So the devotee who follows this, Shontan Bhav, Thakur calls it, the attitude of the child to the mother, has this automatic surrender and acceptance and contentment. And yes, always feels protected, never feels alone. Mother is always there. We have that beautiful song, Ma et achen, or Ami achi, bhavna ki achi ama, that my mother is there. I'm her child, and I'm there. So what is there to worry about? There's nothing to worry about. His mother is there. So this is the attitude that Thakur had, and that we see towards the end that Keshab also has this attitude, now relying fully on the Divine Mother. The mother knows everything. The child only eats, drinks, and makes merry. He doesn't worry himself about the things of the world. Keshab, yes, sir, it is quite true. While talking, Sri Ramakrishna regained the normal consciousness of the world. We can see slowly coming down, because in the beginning he's just talking to the Divine Mother, and then with others there he's starting to talk to Keshab, but still in that ecstatic mood. Coming down to the normal plane of consciousness is not our normal plane of consciousness. He's still seeing God everywhere, still that exalted state, but at least he's now on for him the normal state. So Sri Ramakrishna regained the normal consciousness of the world with a smile on its face. That means he can see everything. He knows who's in the room, aware of things. With a smile on its face, he conversed with Keshab. The room full of men watched him eagerly and listened to their words. Everybody was amazed to find that neither Keshab nor the master inquired about each other's health. They talked only of God. Master to Keshab. Why do the members of the Brahmo Samaj dwell so much on God's glories? Is there any great need of repeating such things as, O God, thou hast created the moon, the sun, and the stars? Most people are filled with admiration for the garden only. How few care to see its owner. Who is greater, the garden or its owner? Now, if we didn't have the example of Sri Ramakrishna and the teachings, we would assume that the owner will never be seen. I mean, who really thinks that God is something that can be available to us to have some direct vision? And of course, vision doesn't mean seeing with these eyes or ordinary understanding, but he brought this. This is another gift he gave to the Brahmo Samaj and really to all of us, that the experience of God is tangible, that it's something that is life-shattering. It's something that will, and this is why when he said to Narendra, yes, I've seen God. I've seen God more tangibly than I'm seeing you, a deeper, stronger type of experience. That this is a real time. If we understand that, then of course we'll We won't care so much for seeing the garden. We'll want to see the person who made the garden, the owner of the garden. So this is what Thakur is telling them, because the Brahmo Samajis, they didn't have this idea that God realization is not just the goal of life, but is something that is possible. It's possible. It's a rare thing, of course, but Thakur gave us that faith that this can be done and will be done eventually by everyone, and that this is something that is the one thing worth striving for in this life, because it's the one permanent thing, one thing that will remove all of our doubt and our misery and our anxiety and suffering and everything, and the whole reason why we go through all of this. We're in this world to lose our attachment, to see the attractions of the world is so meaningless next to the reality of the divine. So he says, who is greater, the garden or its owner? After a few drinks at a tavern, do I care to know how many gallons of wine are stored there? One bottle is enough for me. We see so many times when Sri Ramakrishna goes into this ecstatic mood that almost the only way we can explain it is the type of intoxication. This term, unmada or matta, is mad. It also means intoxicated. Mada is wine and drink and everything. So in many religious traditions, that this is one of the few ways that we can understand that God intoxicated state, as if one has drunk too much, and and for Swami, he would actually wobble back and forth like a drunkard, and sometimes he would tell his disciples, "No, don't hold on to me now; they'll think that I'm drunk." But he would really stagger, like someone who had too much to drink. So it's a very apt illustration about after a few drinks at a tavern, do I care to know how many gallons of wine are stored there? One bottle is enough for me. When I met Narendra, I never asked him, who is your father? How many houses does he own? There were one or two exceptions, It was Swami with Tarak, Swami Shivananda, or was it with the Shashi? One of them, Shashi. Swami Shivananda, because his father, because he had met his father. His father came. He was a great tantric devotee, and so because he said, for some reason I feel like asking you that. I normally don't do that. Now with Swamiji, he didn't ask us simple things. Who was your father? Where do you live? These are just niceties. These are not very important. But we remember the meeting in Jadu Malik's house, when he really wanted to know from Swamiji, not who was your father, but who are you? Who are you really? And why have you come to this earth? How long will you live? Well, he asked him all of those questions, and he got all of the answers that he was expecting to get. And he realized that his vision of Swamiji was real and true, that Swamiji was born to do Thakur's work. And he doesn't say too much, but probably knew that he wouldn't live long. He used to say, when he knows his real nature. And I take that to mean when he knows his mission in life, that why he came as a companion of Sri Ramakrishna, then he'll refuse to live in a body any longer. And he only lived as long as he did because Thakur put that little spell of Maya on him. Otherwise, he could have cast off this body almost any time. He was of a different nature, Swamiji. Shall I tell you the truth? Man loves his own riches, and so he thinks that God loves his too. He thinks that God will be pleased if we glorify his riches. Once Shambhu said to me, please bless me that I may die, leaving my riches at the lotus feet of God. I answered, these are riches only to you. What riches can you offer God? To him, these are mere dust and straw. Once a thief broke into the temple of Vishnu, that means the Radhakanta temple, and and robbed the image of its jewels. Mathur Babu and I went to the temple to see what was the matter. Mathur, of course, was the proprietor. He was the manager, the one in charge of all the temple doings and everything. All of the priests and everyone, the temple officers, they all worked under him. Addressing the image, Mathur said bitterly, "What a shame, Lord! You are so worthless. The thief took all the ornaments from your body, and you couldn't do a thing about it." Thereupon I said to Mathur, "Shame on you, how improper your words are. To God, the jewels you talk so much about are only lumps of clay. Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, is his consort. Do you mean to say that he should spend sleepless nights because a thief has taken your few rupees? You mustn't say such things. Can one ever bring God under control through wealth? He can be tamed only through love." Yeah, this is a very common thing. What was the temple? One of the temples, maybe 10, 15 years ago, they dug up and they found somewhere in the south, Tirupati, was it? Huh? Huh? Hangseswari. Oh, anyhow, I'm thinking of another one. Anyhow, in some place in Kerala. Huh? Padmanabha, was it? Oh, I went there.
Yeah.
Oh, and they found just a fortune in things that people had given, very expensive gold jewelry and everything. That somehow people thought they'll get tremendous amount of merit by giving very expensive things there, and just worth millions of dollars. I don't know. It's a fortune. Gangsheshwari is in Bengal.
Hangseswari saved her own jewelry and all the things when they were actually saved. That actually Motivo mentioned.
There's a nice story about the Hankeshwari temple with Mahapurush Maharaj. You know about that? Towards the end of his life, he somehow he must have gone there, and uh, he asked them to bring a picture of it, and they kept it on his wall. And then he said, "This Hankeshwari, this is a image of Mother Kali, that now you have to give offerings at night to the jackals, Shiva, the jackals to come." And he would ask, did the jackals take it? And they said, no, they left. He said, oh, you're giving the wrong things. You have to give some meat, luchi, and goat meat. It's very interesting. I won't say he got seen on it at the end, but towards the end of his life, this imagination. What's that? Yeah, he had some vision, of course, but he got it into his head that they had to do offerings every night to the jackals, who were the companions of Mother Kali. Yeah. So can one ever bring God under control through wealth? He can be tamed only through love. What does he want? Certainly not wealth. He wants from his devotees love, devotion, feeling, discrimination, and renunciation. Yeah, these are called the treasures. All of these things. One looks on God exactly according to one's own inner feeling. Take, for instance, a devotee with an excess of tamas. He thinks that the Divine Mother eats goat, so he slaughters one for her. Again, the devotee endowed with rajas cooks rice and various other dishes for the mother. But the sattvic devotee doesn't make any outer show of his worship. People don't even know he is worshiping. If he has no flowers, he worships God with mere Ganges water and the leaves of the bel tree. His food offering to the deity consists of sweetened puffed rice or a few candies. Occasionally, he cooks a little rice pudding for the deity. Thakur, he always saw that same divine presence within everyone, and yet he was also so aware of the personality distinctions and things, and how Some will have an excess of tamas, but he would talk about the bhakti of tamas, the bhakti of rajas, that they could also be good devotees, that everyone has a different nature, and they express their devotion in different ways. It's interesting that he wasn't very fond of the rajasic type of devotion, where there's a lot of show and wearing silk cloth and all the things. But the tamasic type of devotion he loved. The way of the dacoit, he would say, that mother, reveal yourself to me, or I'll kill you, or I'll cut my throat. That you have to do it, to force the demand. He liked that attitude, and of course the sattvic attitude, that he used to say, the less people know about our spiritual practices, the better. That there's a great tendency to not show off exactly, but they know that we spend a long time in spiritual practice. A little bit of satisfaction comes that, they'll have a high opinion of us, that we're real devotees, this and that. He said they're very harmful, that the less people know. People think, see, the example of the sattvic devotee is people think that he overslept. He gets up early and stays in his room and meditates on his bed under the mosquito curtain, and nobody knows anything. And he doesn't care. He doesn't. He'll never say, "Yeah, of course I got up early. I was in my room. You think I just sleep late?" Doesn't care. So that's the sattvic devotee. There's also another class of devotees, those who are beyond the three gunas. They have the nature of a child. Their worship consists in chanting God's name, just his name. So we see in Thakur's case that he exhibited a little bit of everything. Of course, the Rajasic, not much. We don't find that, but definitely the sattvic type of worship. Rajasic, if we want to say, I mean, he did the formal puja at one time, but it was never the way that he explains it. This tamasic, he had that attitude. Mother, you have to reveal yourself to me.
But I mean,
Yeah.
whether Thakur approved that kind of animal sacrifice.
Animal sacrifice. Thakur didn't get too much involved. There were times when I think one Kali Puja night it wasn't done or something, and Thakur said, "No, you have to keep the customs of the temple, the way things were started." He understood it. A period came where he couldn't be present. He couldn't watch it. He couldn't bear to watch it, and he used to say at that time, even to cut a lemon, I could do it with great difficulty, saying, "Joy, Kali." So, yeah, he grew up with it. I mean, this was part of the culture in Bengal. Balidan, you know that, of course. And so he was never a reformist who said that we have to outlaw all of these things, these are barbaric and everything. He understood that this was for people with this tamasic nature and tamasic attitude, that this is how they felt, that this was their offer. Actually, it goes back to the Vedic period. This can all be traced back to the early Vedic period when the animals were sacrificed, goats they were tied to a post, and there were all sorts of things like that. So it's not something that we think is just some aberration, that how it got introduced, that it's so much against the tradition. It has its roots in the old Vedic period, in the yajnas and things. But he took no joy in it. Yeah. And then this the devotee who was beyond the three gunas has the nature of a child. This was really the default attitude of Sri Ramakrishna. Even when he did all of the other spiritual practices, he did these other things. He took the attitude of the mother looking upon God as a child, with Ramlala, and the Dasya Bhava he did, feeling himself to be like Hanuman. But we see after all of the different practices, he seemed to go right back to looking upon God as mother. So that seemed to be the the most natural attitude for him. He liked all of them, practiced all of them, but that was the one that resonated resonated most with him, I would say. To Kesha with a smile, why is it that you were ill? There is a reason for it. Many spiritual feelings have passed through your body. Therefore, it has fallen ill. At the time an emotion is aroused, one understands very little about it. The blow that it delivers to the body is felt only after a long while. I've seen big steamers going by on the Ganges, at the time hardly noticing their passing. But, oh my, what a terrific noise is heard after a while when the waves splash against the banks. Perhaps a piece of the bank breaks loose and falls into the water. Thakur uses this illustration in a second sense also. He talks about these great souls that come and make a big commotion and they get a big following, something like Keshab. Huh? And he said, but with the avatar, it's a different thing. It's like the big steamer that has to be in the middle of the river. The others can come close to the bank, and the waves come. The wake of it will come, and everyone will see it. But this big steamer, by the time those waves come, the steamer's out of sight. So this is why the avatar is mostly not recognized during his lifetime, but the effects are tremendous afterwards. So he uses that illustration both ways. Yeah, Thakur used to say that this human frame, for most people, is not capable of withstanding the higher types of bhava, mahabhava, prema, all of these things. That they're just he'll give the illustration here. An elephant entering a hut creates havoc within and ultimately shakes it down. The elephant of divine emotion enters the hut of this body and shatters it to pieces. So when Thakur talks about this adhar, this is one of his favorite illustrations, the size of a container. So for someone like Swamiji, Narendra, then he says another time when an elephant goes to a big reservoir, you hardly see splattering of water. In a small one, there'll be big. So someone like Swamiji, he could withstand the tremendous spiritual emotions and samadhi and all these different things, whereas for others it'd be too much. And even Swamiji ultimately, his health failed, partly because of that, especially that visit to Amarnath. We know that was probably the most earth-shattering and physically shattering experience that he ever had. When he went into the temple of Amarnath and had the vision of the Shiva Lingam and everything, that after that his heart expanded and he had a blood clot in one eye. He could hardly see after that in one eye. And all because of that spiritual emotion from that one experience. So he's telling Keshab, he's trying to explain, he'll give two different reasons. One, all of these spiritual emotions, and the other, Mother is ridding him of every last bit of karma before he goes. We'll get to that. Do you know what actually happens when a house is on fire? At first, a few things inside burn. Then comes the great commotion. Just so, the fire of knowledge at first destroys such enemies of spiritual life as passion, anger, and so forth. Then comes the turn of ego. And lastly, a violent commotion is seen in the physical frame. You may think that everything is going to be over, but God will not release you as long as the slightest trace of illness is left. You simply cannot leave the hospital if your name is registered there. As long as the illness is not perfectly cured, the doctor won't give you a permit to go. Why did you register your name in the hospital at all? All laugh. Yeah, Keshab was he was a very special soul, and Thakur looked upon him that way. But Thakur knew that he had his few little things. He had this little desire for name and fame, and to have an organization, and all of these things. And what he's trying to say is that uh, you won't get released until all of these things are burned up, and that this illness was really allowing him, I would think, allowing him to have that ultimate uh, liberation somehow. That he's saying that you're not going to be released. It means that there'll be more physical suffering and everything, but this is, and in a very nice way, if we see people suffering at the end, we can feel how much of their karma is being burned up before they give up the body. We wonder sometimes why there's so much suffering at the end. So at least one way we can get a little bit of consolation when we have to see that suffering. So when he said, "Why did you register your name in the hospital at all?" All left. Keshab laughed again and again at the master's allusion to the hospital. Then Sri Ramakrishna spoke of his own illness to Keshab. Frida used to say, "Never before have I seen such ecstasy for God, and never before have I seen such illness. I was then seriously ill with stubborn diarrhea. It was as if millions of ants were gnawing at my brain. But all the same, spiritual talk went on day and night. Dr. Rama of Natagore was called in to see me. He found me discussing spiritual truth. What a madman, he said. Nothing is left of him but a few bones, and still he is reasoning like that." Yeah, Sri Ramakrishna had a very weak stomach, power of digestion and everything, uh, and suffered from dysentery so many different times. And how and why he was able to come back from that 6 months in samadhi. That whole period, it's a very odd thing for us to understand where everybody else was and what was going on at that time, and why some wandering monk had to come and try to feed him every day. And it's to me very mysterious, that period. It maybe Sridhar had was gone at that time, but everyone was there, the other temple priests and everything. But somehow they say that this wandering monk came and kept his body alive and everything. And how the mind came back, uh, we have two things at the same time. One, of course, he heard the voice of the Divine Mother, remain in Bhavamukha. But then he also said that his body came down with his dysentery, and the pain was so tremendous that it brought the mind back to the body consciousness. So maybe that was how the Divine Mother did it. We don't know exactly, but throughout his life, he used to have this problem with digestion and everything, and dysentery. Master to Keshab. All depends on God's will. O Mother, all is done after thine own sweet will. Thou art in truth self-willed, Redeemer of mankind. Thou workest thine own work, men only call it theirs. Shokali Torecha, there's a famous Ram Prasad song. In order to take full advantage of the dew, the gardener removes the soil from the Basra rose down to the very root. The plant thrives better on account of the moisture. Perhaps that is why you too are being shaken to the very root. Keshab and the master laugh. It may be that you will do tremendous things when you come back. Now, I don't know why Thakur says that. Does he think that maybe he'll recover from this? It's very hard to know, well, what's in his mind at that time. We would assume that he knows it's the final illness, but does it mean when he comes back reborn again? Or is not at all clear what he means and why he says it exactly. Is he trying to give Keshab a little bit of hope? I really don't know why he says this. But this is that idea, being shaken to the root, so that all of this, the last drop of attachment, of attachment and desire for name and fame, all of these things, the last bit of that will just be completely rooted out. And then he'll be released from the hospital. That means he'll be freed from this samsara. He'll be able to go back to where he came from, his real abode. Whenever I hear that you are ill, I become extremely restless. After hearing of your last illness, I used to weep to the Divine Mother in the small hours of the morning. I prayed to her, O Mother, if anything happens to Keshab, with whom then shall I talk in Calcutta? Coming to Calcutta, I offered fruit and sweets to the Divine Mother with a prayer for your well-being. The devotees were deeply touched to hear of Sri Ramakrishna's love for Keshab and his longing for the Brahmo leader. Master, but this time, to tell the truth, I didn't feel anxious to that extent. Only for 2 or 3 days did I feel a little worried. Now, does it mean that he thinks that he'll recover, or does it mean that he's resigned now that he knows this is the final illness? So. Keshav's venerable mother came to the east door of the room, the same door through which Keshab had entered. Umanath said aloud to the master, Sir, here is mother saluting you. Sri Ramakrishna smiled. Umanath said again, Mother asked you to bless Keshab that he may be cured of his illness. Master to Keshav's mother, please pray to the Divine Mother, who is the bestower of all bliss. She will take away your troubles. Now, for one thing, the Thakur didn't like to take the role of the guru. He used to say, Guru Baba Karta, these 3 words, he couldn't bear them, as if stung by a horned fish. Very rarely would he say outright that, yes, I bless you. He would say, the Lord himself, the Holy Divine Mother will bless you and everything. At the same time, it can also be that how can he utter these words when he knows that Keshav won't live? And we'll get the story of the doctor. He knows that he won't survive. So he's saying that pray to the Divine Mother. She will take away all your troubles. Does that mean she'll save Keshav? He's going to die eventually. But praying to the Divine Mother, at least some comfort may come. To Keshab, don't spend long hours in the inner apartments. You will sink down and down in the company of women. Inner apartments, in those days, they had a little bit of a zenana, they call it. That was the Muslim term, that the women had their own separate inner apartments where they stayed, so that they couldn't freely mix with each other, but out of sight of the men. And even at that time in Calcutta, they had that. And Thakur would almost always, when he went to somebody's house, the women could see, they'd be in a room, they could look and see him. But then when it came time to eat, he would go and spend time with them so that they could get his company also. We don't know what he said because M wasn't there. All we know is that they loved him. And he was so fond of them and had that very sweet, special relationship with them that lost to us, unfortunately, because M was not allowed to go back there. He would go on his own. Sometimes they would hear laughter and everything, and so he was very free with them. We don't get that picture just because M couldn't be there at that time. But he's telling him that now is the time you're facing death. Don't let the mind get attached again. You will feel better if you hear only talk of God. The master uttered these words in a serious voice and then began to laugh like a boy. He said to Keshab, let me see your hand. He waited playfully like a child. At last he said, no, your hand is light. Hypocrites have heavy hands. All laughed. Yeah, Thakur used to do this. It was quite a common thing. He would say, let me feel your hand. I don't know how we could tell it. Umanath again said to the master from the door, Mother asks you to bless Keshab. Master gravely, what can I do? God alone blesses all. Then he quotes again from the song, "Thou workest thine own work, men only call it theirs." Now he'll give this very harsh truth. God laughs on two occasions. He laughs when two brothers divide land between them. They put a string across the land and say to each other, "This side is mine and that side is yours." God laughs and says to himself, "Why, this whole universe is mine." And about a little clod, they say, "This side is mine and that side is yours." Then we get the second half of this. God laughs again when the physician says to the mother, weeping bitterly because of her child's desperate illness, "Don't be afraid, mother, I shall cure your child." The physician does not know that no one can save the child if God wills that he should die. All are silent. So it seems clear to me that Thakur knew this is the final illness. Doesn't know exactly how long it'll be, of course, but and he's preparing, and he wants Keshav to prepare his mind for that final journey. Just then Keshav was seized with a fit of coughing, which lasted for a long time. The sight of his suffering made everyone sad. He became exhausted and could stay no longer. He bowed low before the master and left the room, holding to the wall as before. Some refreshments had been arranged for the master. Keshav's eldest son was seated near him. Amrita introduced the boy and requested Sri Ramakrishna to bless him. Again, asking for blessings. The master said, "It is not given to me to bless anyone." With a sweet smile, he stroked the boy's body gently. Now, in India, when they ask to bless somebody, very often they don't mean say, "Yes, I bless you." They mean put your hand on him. You put your hand on the head. In Thakur's case, now he's rubbing the body. So they're kind of laughing. He just said, "No, I won't bless anybody." But by doing that, he's blessing him. Amrita with a smile. "All right, then do as you please." So he's satisfied that Thakur has given his blessings. Master to the devotees, "I cannot say such a thing as, 'May you be healed.' I never asked the Divine Mother to give me the power of healing. I prayed to her only for pure love." Is Keshav a small person? Now Keshav is no longer there. This is all for the benefit of the family members and the very close disciples and devotees of Keshav. Now he's really trying to console them. Is Keshav a small person? He is respected by all, seekers after wealth as well as holy men. Once I visited Dayananda, who was then staying at a garden house. Dayananda in those days was probably one of the 2 or 3 most famous spiritual leaders in India. Dayananda Saraswati, the Arya Samaj. Yeah, Dayananda and Keshav and 1 or 2 others. So he was a real renowned figure in those days. I saw he was extreme, so he's going to show that even he, how much he respected Keshav. I saw he was extremely anxious about Keshav's coming. He went out every few minutes to see whether he had arrived. I learned later on that Keshav had made an appointment with him that day. Keshav, I understood, had no faith in the sacrifices and the deities mentioned in the Vedas. Yeah, the Dayananda's idea was somehow to revive the old Vedic tradition with yajna, fire sacrifice, havans and things like that, which involved the Vedic deities, not so much with the modern puja and image worship or things like that. These, in place of image worship, things were offered into the fire. So this was their version of a reformed society, parallel to the Brahmo Samaj in Bengal. So they shared things in common, the Keshav and Dayananda. So, Keshav, I understood, had no faith in the sacrifices and the deities mentioned in the Vedas. Referring to this, Dayananda said, "Why? The Lord has created so many things. Could he not make deities as well?" Good point. Continuing, the master said, Keshav is free from the pride of a small-minded religious teacher. To many people, he has said, if you have any doubts, go there to have them solved. That means to Sri Ramakrishna. He sent so many people to Thakur. It is my way, too, to say, what shall I do with people's respect? Let Keshab's virtues increase a millionfold. Keshab is certainly a great man. See, Keshab was one of the very few of the members of the Brahmo Samaj who had no jealousy, that he loved Sri Ramakrishna. Vijay Goswami also. With some of the others, we see a little bit of jealousy. They wanted to have everyone feel that, oh no, Keshab was the one who influenced Sri Ramakrishna, not the other way around, and how much Thakur learned from him and how great he was. A little bit of that type of feeling. And then some of them later with Swamiji also, the tremendous resentment for not respecting Keshab or joining their group or anything. Very funny type of attitude. Keshab didn't have that at all. Thus did Sri Ramakrishna praise Keshab before the latter's disciples. After partaking of the refreshments, the master was ready to leave. The Brahmo devotees accompanied him to the cab, which was standing in the street. While coming down the stairs, the master noticed that there was no light on the ground floor. See, they were all wrapped in attention, listening to Sri Ramakrishna, I'm sure completely unconscious of how late it was getting and the dark outside and everything like that. No one had lit the lamp. He said to Amrita and Keshav's other disciples, these places should be well lighted. A house without light becomes stricken with poverty. Please see that it doesn't happen again. Then Sri Ramakrishna left for Dakshineshwar with one or two devotees. Okay, we can stop here. This is we're still in the same chapter, but now he leaves Keshav. We get a little bit of a different topic here. He's on his way back to Dakshineshwar from Keshav's cottage, and he's going to make it. Sri Ramakrishna will make a stop at Jai Gopal Sen's house. There were so many devotees in Calcutta that Thakur would stop and pay visits to, and many of them were members of the Brahmo Samaj. And they used to invite him when they had festivals and things. And so he's going to make a stop there. Okay, we'll also stop here. Om Niranjanam Nityamanandharupam Bhaktanukam Bhatadavikraham Ishavataram Parameshamedhyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namah. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose hearts melt in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace. Peace be unto you.